Hey, good morning, everyone. Um, Pleasure to be here. And so today, just a quick introduction to myself. I've been working with conservation for a long time, and conservation trust funds on and off since about 2003 or so. And um, and uh, and the Conservation Finance Alliance with the organization which I lead has been working with conservation trust funds from its start, which is basically 2002. So it's one of the main areas of focus, but we do a lot of other work as well on conservation finance. Um, so I'm going to walk you through a background on conservation trust funds, and then I'll tell you a little bit about the Coral Triangle Conservation Fund, which we'll be able to talk about a bit more during the panel. So, conservation trust funds generally are independent, private institutions that are designed for sustainable financing for biodiversity conservation, but it could also include climate um, adaptation and sustainable development, a whole range of activities. They're generally financial institutions in that they're grant making or make investments. They tend not to do activities. They tend to just be focused on the financing. So they're funding protected areas, research, capacity building, et cetera. They work in close partnership with governments. So a lot of the funds we'll hear about later are actually government funds. And so we tend to make a distinction between independent conservation trust funds and government funds. But in a way, there's a continuum. So some of them are uh, independent, but have a lot of strong government representatives on their board. Others are totally government funds, but generally best practices is for an independent trust fund. There's a growing number of conservation trust funds around the world. They started off back in the 1990s in Africa. A lot of them were developed for protected protected and conserved areas. Many of them were started with debt for nature swaps, which we heard about, I think we heard about earlier, but debt conversions. There's three existing networks, the REDLAC, which is for Latin America and the Caribbean, the CAFE for Africa, and AppNet, which is we're trying to restart for the Pacific and Asia region. So if you're interested in more information about that, let me know. And the other thing is that there's growing number of conservation trust funds being put together because of a thing called project finance for permanence, which is a type of funding approach where a range of donors get together in one single closing. They put a lot of money together. They often create a trust fund that then will use that money over about 20 years or so to reinforce the protected area network. Over that time, the government starts to take more and more responsibility for actions. And so, with a growing number of debt conversions and project finance for permanence, there are a growing number of conservation trust funds around the world. Principal activities here: raising money, investing and managing that money, and then deploying that money efficiently and effectively. So, in terms of raising money, various sources, a lot of them donors, debt conversions, as I mentioned, but some of them can be from fees, taxes, things like that from government budgets. Investing and managing, generally, they'll invest that money in a balanced portfolio, oftentimes international stocks and bonds, sometimes local investments, and in rare cases, some infrastructure. And they try to manage that effectively and get a return. And then they'll deploy or spend the money based on their mission. So each trust fund will have a mission that will be included in their origination or their charter documents. They focus on cost effectiveness and impact reporting tends to be an area of need and necessary improvement. So there's different kinds of use of funds. When we think of conservation trust funds, the first thing you think about is an endowment fund. And not profits can have an endowment fund. Anyone can set up an endowment often universities have endowment funds, right? So, but an endowment fund is where you maintain the body or the corpus of the amount of money, you invest that in stocks and bonds, and you only spend the profit on that. So you kind of try to grow that endowment over time. It's great for assuring longevity of the institutions. Sinking fund is what I describe for project finance for permanence. They often use sinking funds, raise a lot of money, spend a lot of money as you go down. I'll show you what these look like with graphics. And then a revolving fund is where there's income coming in on a regular basis. The Palau Paradise, Pristine Paradise fee, Belize has a money coming in from tourists. It goes into a trust fund that's then managed for protected areas. Um, and then pass-through funding is where the Conservation Trust Fund acts basically as an intermediary for large donors that put money into the trust fund, and then that trust fund is able to give out smaller grants that a large donor is unable to do. So, real quickly, I'm going to try to move fast here, but for an endowment type of approach, you basically have to raise a lot of money and then you only can spend a small amount every year. If you're investing well, on average, maybe you'll make a 6% return every year from those investments. You have to set aside some money for inflation, so you can't really spend all 6%. You may have to pay a financial manager a 0.5% or 1%. And so you may end up only with, 2 to 3% a year. So if you have $100 million endowment, which is a nice size endowment, you may be only able to spend $2 million a year from that, right? So it's a very interesting model, has longevity, but there are challenges because we have needs right away, right? So the other model, the next model is a sinking fund. You raise $100 million, but you spend that down more over time. And so it gives you more money to spend each year, which is really good, which is why these project finance for permanence programs really use that. But in the end, you end up with no money in your endowment, okay? Unless you set aside some from that, right? So, and then, the revolving fund, this is a really great source because no matter if you have an endowment or a sinking fund, if you have money coming in each year that you can spend, then you get money out to the projects that need it. So, different revenue sources could be activity fees or entrance fees, green taxes, payment for ecosystem services like water funds, where there's a small fee attached to a water bill or electricity bill, and that would go into the trust fund account. You buffer, so you balance it from changes in tourism levels each year. So you try to save a bit, and then you give a grant program out. You try to achieve your desired impacts and strengthen the loop, the closed loop circle, and then pass through very straightforward. You get a grant that the donor requires you to do certain things with. You pass that money out in smaller grants to the beneficiaries and really helps donors get money down to smaller levels. So um, there's a range of resources on our website. We produce the practice standards for conservation trust funds. This is the Bible for how to design and manage a conservation trust fund. They're aspirational. Conservation trust funds work towards achieving all those practice standards. So it's not the minimum requirements, but the desired outcomes. We did a really good 10-year review back in 2020 that's got a lot of information on it. And we've been doing, we have other resources as well, and we'll share the presentation with you. These are just two of them, the practice standards from 2020 and the 10-year review. Okay, that was my introduction to conservation trust funds. I hope that was helpful. Now I'm going to talk about the Coral Triangle Conservation Fund. The CFA has been supporting it. We work very closely with the Coral Triangle Initiative for coral reefs, fisheries, and food security. And we've had a range of partners right now working on that. I'm the secretary and treasurer, so I'm not on the board, but we have a great board, which I don't have a picture of here. But the mission statement here is that priority marine protected and conserved areas in the Coral Triangle will be effective, climate resilient, and sustainable while benefiting nature and communities. That's the mission statement. The focus area is Coral Triangle, but we're allowing the fund to support any project that within the political boundaries of the 6 Coral Triangle countries. So not only in the scientific boundary, that core Coral Triangle area. Um, However, the focus is on transboundary and regional impacts. The value of the Coral Triangle, someone talked about before. This just talks about its value in terms of carbon and economy and biodiversity. So I think we all know that. The programming priorities for the CTCF are aligned with these 3 outcomes or goals: protect, recover, and transform. Um, the it's aligned with the CTI CFF's regional program of action, and so it's in support of them, but it's a subset really of that, the RPOA too, in that it really is focused on marine protected and conserved areas rather than all of the goals of the Coral Triangle Initiative. And so it supports a network of protected areas, resilience of those ecosystems to what we talked about from threats, bleaching, et cetera, and then transforming the economies and the communities that are dependent upon the coral reefs so that they can have a better relationship with the reefs, so they're not destroying the reefs, and so that they have more robust economies so that they're not as threatened by changes to the reef. So you should support the CTCF. These are some of the reasons why it would be a good idea. Supporting 30 by 30 is one of them. A lot of the countries here do have objectives there. And I think that's it for me. So again, I'll be able to share a bit more about the Coral Triangle Conservation Fund